evening, our esteemed viewers. Welcome to today's episode of the Tower at UNN. My name is Dr. Juko Kateriga, the host and presenter of this show. In this show, we always try to look at issues that have trended within a week as we try to get sense out of what has conspired. And today, it has been a long week since we last talked. And today, I have with me great guests that I think everybody will enjoy. And I hope everyone is ready to roll the ball. With me today in the studios, I have Senior Gombia Henry, the journalist, the great writer, as well as the celebrated political analyst. Mr. Gombia, would you please greet our viewers?
It's a very happiness on my side to greet everybody for the first time on your show. And I hope that what we're going to say tonight will be fruitful and meaningful to everybody. And so welcome and thank you for hosting me.
Thank you, Mr. Gombia. I think everybody is very happy to see you because some of our people had just heard of you in the 80s and the 90s, and it's a pleasure having you at the tower, Mr. Gombia.
I spent about 3 months in Boston about 15 years ago, and I remember very, very good memories about Boston, and I hope everybody there is still as joyful as I last saw them.
Thank you very much. Our viewers, esteemed viewers, I have with me the former presidential candidate 2020 and a senior journalist as well as a political analyst, Mr. Joseph Cabrera. Pleasure having you, Mr. Cabrera, on the tower at UNN. Yes, the sound seems okay. Yeah, I think now the sound is good.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm glad to be among this distinguished panel with people I used to hear about when I was aspiring to be a journalist, like Senior Gombia, and reading his things and then his analysis. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much for everybody and for all the viewers on UNN.
Yes, Mr. Cabrera, I think you had a very good experience when you walked around and traveled all over Uganda trying to look for the vote. And I think you're going to share that experience with our viewers. It's a pleasure having you tonight.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. With me again in the studios, I have Jonathan Tumwesigwa Buganda. He's a celebrated Ugandan lawyer and a researcher as well as a public speaker. Pleasure to have you, Mr. Jonathan Tumwesigwa. Am I sounding the name properly?
Not quite.
Mr. Mwesigwa Jonathan, beg your pardon. Mwesigwa Jonathan Sechizivu.
Yeah, yes, Sechizivu.
Great to have you tonight.
Thank
Can you greet our viewers, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Juko Kateriga. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. It's my first time, and I'm very elated to join a panel of eminent persons whom I've heard about, some of them. Senior Gombia, of course, Mr. Kabuleta, even during his heydays as a journalist at WBS, and as well as my contemporary Desire. So I really hope that I would enjoy the discussion this evening and have a fruitful time. Thank you.
It's pleasure, Jonathan. I think as a lawyer, you're gonna give a very good experience to our panel. And last but not least, Desire, the analyst, UNN analyst, a political analyst, social and economic pundist, I would say. It's a pleasure having you, Desire, on this panel.
No, the pleasure is all mine to be here today, surrounded by so many people in different walks of life and with only one aim, and that's to see the material change in people's lives in Uganda, and they're dedicated to that cause and have added so much to the revolution and keep adding more to the revolution. So the honor is mine to be here today. Greetings to everyone back home or wherever you are. And also always, my heart goes out to anyone who has lost any family members during this pandemic. As we move forward, may the Lord be with us. And then again, today the honor is mine to be here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a very long week, ladies and gentlemen, and our viewers tonight, that the Parliament of Uganda has paid all its its members of Parliament, 200 million Uganda shillings to buy cars. We also have the land issue, which is still trending so much in Uganda. There is a lot of land grabbing all over the country, and particularly in Buganda. And the president of Uganda vowed to fight Mairo land. And I think it's the reason why he appointed the son of Buganda, Mayanja, to be in charge of the land ministry. We also had another issue that has trended. It's about Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Nabanja, who MPs were giving out money, and she said that it was jeopardizing the government programs. And we have also had claims from Honorable Nabanja over her relatives receiving threats for the tough measures she's putting on government corrupt officials. And the more of that we're going to be discussed tonight. Let me come up right now straight. Before I go straight to the point, I would like the producer to play for me that video concerning about the members of Parliament. And from there, I'll bring in direct Honorable Carburetor to analyze the topic. Thank you very much, the producer. Yes, our viewers, welcome back from the video show, the video that you have seen. Right, Mr. Carburetor, when you look at the situation that we've been looking at the video, it's very ironical to the Ugandan situation where we have meager resources and the resources are extravagantly being used by the members of parliament. And when you compare it with countries like Sweden, where they have enough resources, but they are sharing most of the resources to avoid overspending on unnecessary issues. I mean, from there, I would like you to analyze the payment that was made to the members of parliament for buying cars that is worth 200 million Uganda shillings. And when you relate that, or simple calculation, it would be very categorical that that money can be used either to buy COVID vaccine or it could be used to do other important issues that really the country needs that help an ordinary Ugandan. Let's start from there.
Thank you very much. Now, here's the thing. That discussion of the money given to MPs to buy cars every 5 years comes up, and usually it comes up at a time when there's some need and there's a lot of anger and vitriol. But, I prefer to look at the thing holistically and look at the genesis of all this. Because if you look, for instance, I'll tell you this, that, okay, first of all, let's get into what it said. That money which was given to the MPs is budgeted for. All the entitlements to the 11th Parliament were passed by the 10th Parliament, and they were put in the budget, and the money is budgeted for. Now, that doesn't mean it's a fair distribution for members of Parliament to have that much money, but it is there, it was budgeted for. But here is the thing about the whole budgeting process. When it comes to Uganda, for instance, the money, because the house budget is about 700 billion Uganda shillings. So it comes to about, if you divide it, comes about 1,900 or 1.9 billion shillings every day. Every day, the money that is spent on the head of state is about 1.9 billion every day. So if I round it off, the amount of money that Museveni eats in a day can buy 10 cars for MPs. 10 cars for him for one day. So if Museveni just gave us 2 months of what he eats, it would sort out, all the MP car issues. So what I'm trying to tell you, then you go down, come from the president, look at the MP, and look at the amount of money that is being, extravagantly spent. Because if you compare the State House budget for Uganda with that of Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda, we are not even close. Kenya has a GDP which is 3 times bigger than ours, and yet they spend they spend less than half of what we spend on their president. Less than what we spend on our president, less than half of what we spend on our president. Yes, yet their GDP is 3 times bigger than Uganda's. So the extravagance comes from the top. As I've already said, fish rots from the top. Then it comes down to the MPs and whether it's necessary for them to be getting 200 million shillings in the time when the country is, piling up its foreign debt, and for cars and so on. But then they could argue, and they've done that then you go down to the ministries, government ministries and the departments and agencies, ministries, departments and agencies, MDAs, and you find that almost all the people there at the level of deputy commissioner, and so on, get almost the same amount of money to buy cars, and theirs don't even last 5 years. Some of them even last less than 5 years. Then they get an allowance of 2 million shillings every month in fuel. They get fuel cards that they can go and get fuel from some of the main, petrol station dealers, but they can't spend 2 million. Most of them are driving from home to, to office somewhere in Kampala, maybe once in a while going up country. And so for most of the time, they cannot spend all the 2 billion in a month. So they either call relatives and come on, use my fuel card, go and fuel your car and so on. And then you go lower at all the amounts of money that we spend, which are completely unnecessary, totally unnecessary. And even when they are necessary, the figures are completely blown up. Now, when it comes to things that actually matter to the people, that's when there is a shortage of money. When it comes to things like vaccines, when it comes to things like giving out, food for the hungry, putting up some kind of social security measures to help people, especially in this time when they've been locked down. When anything comes to the masses, that's when Uganda is poor. But when it comes to the leaders and the people at the top, we are rich. We are richer than Sweden, richer than America. We are richer than all of you guys, wherever you are, at that level. But down, that's where all the poverty exists. And of course, as the subject says here, classism. It's all about that. I mean, these people, the people at the bottom part of this ladder, are beasts of burden. They are pushed around. They pay taxes of everything they take, and they're involved in all manner of taxation. And especially, like I explained in Thursday when I was on the Uganda show, that you look at Uganda, it is 70% peasantry who do not contribute to income tax in the country. They have zero contribution towards income tax in the country because all their businesses have been disabled one way or another. Then outside of that, and they have been kept at that level of peasantry. And by the way, make no mistake, the regime does so much to keep those people at that stage because they are the ones who keep them in power. And now the reason it is so difficult, it has been difficult for people to foment a kind of revolution in Uganda that was in Sudan, is because those 70% of the people who are a huge chunk are almost disinterested. But through no fault of theirs, because when they endeavor to do something that will take them out of peasantry, they are sat on. The government makes sure it sits on them and keeps them there. Just stay there. And so they are very easy to appease. So they will go and give them a bar of soap and something like that, and then they will vote in a certain way. So they keep the government power. Now, this other about 29%, the rest of the
middle class,
what you would call the middle class, by the way of whom 1.8 million fell down below the poverty line again after the first lockdown. And I'm sure 1.8 million Ugandans fell down under the poverty line, those are who had come out of it. And after the first lockdown, you should expect that number to go bigger, after the second lockdown. So now these ones are the beasts of burden. They are doing everything to squeeze taxes out of them and, push them to the bar. Now some of them are actually going back down into the peasant class to even increase the 70%. Now the reason it is so difficult for such a revolution, and I've had people like, different political, actors saying that the middle class, let me tell you, this is how poverty is used to keep people humble, so to speak. The middle class are one disaster away from falling apart. I know there were, in the first lockdown, I know there were homes which are fully middle class, 2 cars, posh neighborhoods, or children in nice schools and what, until the lockdown, until the children all came home and they were not at school, at boarding schools. I don't know. Can you get me now?
Yes, you're clear.
Until the children were long at boarding schools and then they are home, then they run out of food and they are starving. And these are real middle class, So the middle class in our country is one medical disaster away from a fundraising or a car wash fundraising to go and help them, because there is no proper insurance for medical insurance, there is no social security net, and so on. So they are on a very fragile place, and that has been ensured by this regime. Now, when somebody is not absolutely sure of where they stand, they tend naturally, 2 things happen. Either they are pushed to the wall and they go all the way and maybe get into some demonstration, but somehow it makes sure it balances it at that level, or they say, let me just hold on to what I have. That's why they have been very dormant in politics, and actually they almost get angry when somebody from that middle class goes and joins politics. Now, of course, at the top are the people who own the country, own all the resources and take everything. They don't even pay taxes and so on. So what I'm trying to show you is that when something comes and is supposed to help the 70%, we are distributing mosquito nets, we are distributing food, we are distributing, buying vaccines for people down there to get any form of medical care. That's when Uganda is the poorest of the poorest countries. But when it comes to spending on the top people, we are rich. We are absolutely rich. I mean, we lavish money on our leaders like no problem. So it is that class divide that, and it has been carefully orchestrated by this regime, very carefully orchestrated by this regime, because it is a regime survival mechanism. Keep the middle class on the edge. You know, they are juggling balls here. You know, you just have enough. Now, if you even have, I know a lady who was supposed to be real middle class until she had to go for an operation for fibroids, and it was not an easy operation. Just 15 million, and she crumbled, and she's supposed to be middle class. You understand? 15 million Uganda shillings. But suddenly there is fundraising, there is what, you know, and all that. And this is somebody who is supposed to be middle class. They should at least now imagine when somebody is that, their life is that precariously held together. There is a limit to how much they want to involve themselves in issues of national importance, or on national guidance, because they feel they do not have the luxury. And he has carefully, very carefully, kept them at that level, you know, so that they are not too comfortable. Because, you know, governments are always changed by middle class. You know that.
That's true.
Revolutions start from middle class. So Museveni has managed the middle class to be almost, tipping over into peasantry. So they just have enough energy to keep themselves up in the
Just Joseph, to chip in on the issue of the middle class, because when you see the strata system where governments try to keep the middle class inactive, basically it's because the middle class seems to be comfortable, a little bit comfortable with the status quo, and they feel that maybe another government that comes in might distract their status quo. Would you support the argument?
No, that's not true. A lot of the middle class are not comfortable. Actually, most of them, let me tell you, a lot of the middle class have traveled outside of this country. They know at what rate other countries are developing. I'll give you examples. You just have to cross over to Tanzania. Tanzania, in 1996, when Museveni won his first election, our GDP was ahead. Where our GDP was bigger than that of Tanzania. By 1999, Tanzania had caught up with us.
Superseded, yes.
Today, Tanzania's GDP is twice ours. Okay, they have doubled us. Now, you just have to go to that country because I've been there previously. I mean, those years ago, and then you keep going there maybe every once in a while, and you see that there is real change in infrastructure, in the way everything is run, in the organization of the community, and basic things that perhaps you people in your countries are used to, where simple things like having proper bus lanes where buses only pass, and things which show that this is an organized society. And they've come from the confusion that we have been in for 35 years, and they are moving away steadily into something desirable. So these middle class have been to these countries. They know that we are stagnant. They know it. They might pretend they don't, but they do actually. So, but the thing is, they can ill afford to get involved in politics. That's why you see, and one thing you also have to learn, to put into question, is there's something Mr. Museveni did about towards the end of the 90s. And it was actually not even him. It is somebody who is now in the opposition and is a big critique of the government, who was a minister at the time, and somebody who was a civil servant ran against him in parliament and really gave him a bad time. So then they came and passed the law that civil servants have to resign from parliament, rather from their jobs, permanent and pensionable, if they want to go and involve themselves in the lottery of elective politics. So now what that did, imagine somebody of my age, I am 49, if I'd been working in the civil service from when I started, finished university, I'll probably be at the level of assistant commissioner or something thereabout. Now, with a permanent and pensionable job. Now, you tell me, Kableta, if you want to go and be a member of parliament, resign this job, completely resign. No, don't take a leave of absence or anything. Resign completely and give up everything, and then go and compete in, for political office. Now, when that was passed, and it was almost spread across even to other non-government institutions. Now, any of the companies, even media companies, the televisions, companies like MTN and Airtel, if you want to go for politics, you have to first resign your jobs. Now, when Museveni did that, he made sure that he would keep a certain caliber of people within politics, and that killed all the middle class. Because I would be honest with you, it would be very difficult for somebody who has been, who has a top job in government somewhere, to give that all up to go and stand for. So actually, when I was standing, one of the things I came up with, I said, just say take 6 months leave of absence, unpaid leave. If you do not go through, come right back. Now, if we just change that small thing, suddenly the middle class would be involved in politics.
Would be participating. Okay, Joseph, let's hold it from there. As let me bring in Jonathan. Jonathan, as a lawyer and as you have seen many of your colleagues going to parliament from grass, and when you look at the situation right now they are so big with the first push with 200 million Ugandan shillings. I would like you to put in your observation on this. What do you think? Is it scapegoatism as Joseph has said? Because Joseph says it is a budgeted issue, only that it is the problem of possibly the strategists are the ones who are not doing it right. I mean, I want your input there, Jonathan.
Thank you, Dr. Juko. Indeed, I associate largely with the views of Mr. Joseph Kabuleta on this kind of crisis. It's a crisis that probably many people tend to look away from in the hope that probably by some miraculous venture akin to the one the Israelites experienced while crossing the desert, manna falling from heaven, that it will be averted, which is not quite the case. But really my take is to say it's indeed of little surprise that the priorities in this country are rather mixed up. You know, I have tried to do a simple study trying to compare members of parliament in the 60s to today's members of parliament under Museveni's regime. Even I think in the early years of Museveni's regime, they were not this extravagant. But I mean, in the later years where Museveni has tried to, have a grip on power and have longevity as far as a dynasty plan is concerned. And it is absurd that those simple men, well grounded in morals, in matters of service to society, were very much eager to travel in those very simple cars. We are talking about Angalia. I have never seen an Angalia myself.
I've seen one.
A Peugeot 404, I hear some of these things. And these cars that traveled the breadth and length of this country, the length and breadth of this country, even when the roads were not as good. But today, you have fairly the main roads leading you to the villages, fairly well done, and therefore you may not even need to have 200 million plus, to buy these so-called V8s and then fuel them, and all the scandals that surround such transactions or procurements in that sense. And so you also want to relate that to the level of debate. People who I think, I don't know how to do the economics there, but let me put it this way. Imagine they earn maybe 10 times less than the current lot of MPs. The quality of debate was so high. I've been reading Hansard's. You're amazed at the quality of debate on issues of national concern. And when you see today's members of parliament, there is a little bit of, not a little bit, a lot of drama in the House over matters, they would have really strived to dedicate more time to study and debate about. They hardly even have enough time to debate about these issues. Anyway, you want to really connect that to today's topic. I agree there is classism in this, and it is deliberate policy by the regime as far as the longevity of the regime and survival is concerned. But two, people will hide about the legalism, to say, as members of parliament, we have a right to acquire these vehicles. We have a right to appropriate what suits us as per the constitution, and therefore you cannot, bring legal action against us. But what's the
Yes, if I
spirit?
to chip in, Jonathan, if you look
Yes.
at legality versus morality, I think that's where it comes in, and that's what Joseph was talking about. Because, there is that issue, that the issue is legal, but what about that money, that lot of money that would be used to buy other stuff? Because at the end of the day, what is very important are the people at the ground.
I agree. I totally agree. And that's the curtain where we hide behind. We present the legal view and want to hold on to that to justify our immoral insatiability. This is really anchored in greed. This is greed, utter greed. There is no better word to describe it. And this greed runs through even all the other subjects we're going to talk about. It is greed that people do not think beyond themselves. They don't want to serve the people that elected them to office, contrary to the promises that they made during the elections, contrary to what people expect of them. I mean, I have colleagues, indeed, as you say, who have gone to parliament, some much younger than me, maybe 6 or 7 years younger than me, others quite a little older than me, maybe 2, 3 years older than me. But their sole motivation has been this money. They have already done their calculations. I'm going to get this kind of loan from the bank, run for office. If I make it, then I'm really, this is how much I'm getting per month in terms of as salary as MP, all the other allowances, the per diem, and inclusive of the 200 million now for their facilitation. That's what the constitution calls it. But it is mean, it is immoral, and I hope we can have a change of heart and look at the kind of crisis we are currently experiencing as a country. First of all, we have an imminent political crisis to deal with. We want to avert it, but we also have a health crisis that has ravaged the whole world. Why, at this moment, can't you have a little bit of shyness, let me call it that, to say, no, let me forego this kind of money for the benefit of the rest of Ugandans? We don't have medicine in hospitals. We don't have, we have how many beds? The other day, the Permanent Secretary for Ministry of Health at UNN was being asked. We have about less than 30,000 beds. We don't have oxygen rather, in hospitals. The medical professionals can't have lunch. We have to debate about their lunch, but here we are having MPs slaying in V8s, slaying. I'm really unamused about the whole idea, and I hope they can take this bitterness at heart and understand that many Ugandans are unhappy with this kind of selfishness, and they hope they can have a change of heart about it. I thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, Council Jonathan. Let me take it from, let's put it to Senior Gombia. Senior Gombia, here we look at a situation whereby, as the previous analysts have mentioned, there is greed, there is, though there is legality, there is greed. And here we look at the opportunity cost comes in is this situation, because if you look at what is more important, is it the cars that they buy for them or other dimensional issues that need to be solved as members of parliament? What is your take, Senior Gombi, about this?
Thank you so much, first of all, for having me here. And let me say this from the very outset of this conversation. First of all, I was a parliamentary reporter from 1980 to 1985. I remember very well seeing the likes of Sam Kutesa, a person at that time I saw as a very, very capable parliamentary debater. Now, when I look at the Sam Kutesa of today, who is a multi-millionaire and not even able to visit countries like here, because if he came here, he'll be arrested. If he went to the United States, he'll be arrested. And this is our foreign secretary or the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Now, the way things have turned in Uganda since the NRM took over or captured power, that's the word I prefer to use, because they were not elected. They captured power, and what they have done with my country of birth is outrageous, in that they have made the country become their own property. Now, when you make a country your own property, you start by making legislators become your own servants. In the time that I was covering Parliament, there wasn't a single time that any member of Parliament at that time was offered this outrageous sum of buying a car. I mean, if I go and work for the government, do they actually expect that I will ask them to give me a car so that I can come to work? Now, if you are chosen to be a member of Parliament, you are supposed to be a representative of people in your constituency. Now, if you are asking the people in your constituency to buy you a car so that you can go and do the work that they sent you to Parliament for, what message are you sending? I agree entirely with Jonathan when he says this is a moral irresponsibility. It's really much more than that. That members of Parliament in Uganda can actually sit there and accept to be paid 200 million Ugandan shillings to buy cars, when the people they've actually gone to represent in that Parliament are walking the streets on foot. You can't even afford a bicycle. And for you, an MP, you go and get 200 million pounds to go and get a car so that you can go and visit them? I mean, how do these people look at these people? How do these constituents look at their MPs when they come with their new cars costing them to, because that is supposed to be taxpayers' money? Now, how do they think when they actually get into those cars, drive back to their constituencies and talk about what they're doing for them? And they know that most of the constituencies actually, they don't have even public transport in the area. They can't afford a bicycle, leave alone bus fare to go wherever they want. Now, this is what Yoweri Museveni has made Uganda come to. That when you are in a position of power, you look to the person who is above. First of all, you look at Museveni. That is why Parliament today has become a laughing stock. They can't pass anything. Museveni comes with anything, and there's no. First of all, he managed to bring about gerrymandering, whereby a lot of constituents are in his area, and there are more members of Parliament from where he comes from, Western Uganda, than the majority of other places in Uganda. The last time I looked at a map of MPs, I was shocked to see that Western Uganda has got more MPs than the rest of Uganda.
That's now, very true.
Yeah. What is this telling? What is this showing to Ugandans? That here we have a leader who has made it a point to see that whatever is done the way he wants it to be done, no matter what you do. That's why I say, when people go to when last time the election took place, there was a lot of hope that the NUP was going to win and there was going to be change. I told the people here from London, where I'm sitting, and said, nothing is going to change. Because first of all, he's got more votes than anyone can ever get. He's got MPs in his own area. There was a belief that maybe even people in his own area this time will say, oh, you've been there enough for far more years, and maybe it's time for another person. No. But for me, let me leave this issue we're talking about just briefly and talk about the issue of Museveni being president of Uganda. Because for me, the moment that I met a general here in London who told me that in 2006, Kizza Besigye won the election. And the government did everything they could to make sure that they turned that ballot around and made Museveni win. So for as far as I'm concerned, since 2006, Uganda has had an illegitimate president in power. Because Kizza Besigye would have been president in 2006. I wasn't very keen on Kizza Besigye becoming president, but he won that year. And the general, who most of you know, who came here and told us, yes, we saw that Besigye had won, and we worked all night to see that we turned the ballot around. Now, what chance, if a president has done that, what chance do you give MPs to go into parliament and really represent the people? They are actually they are chosen in power or as MPs to go and actually fulfill the work that Yoweri Museveni wants them to do. The warning that I have been issuing since I came into the UNN is this: that people keep saying, maybe they don't anymore, but so for when I came here, people were telling us, oh, guys, I'm asking, you are still sleeping? Are you still sleeping? This is a guy who has captured the country to mold it into his own ways, to appoint people in places where he wants them to be. It's going to take a heavy toll on any leader who replaces Museveni to change things the way they are now. Because you look at any institute, Museveni has destroyed every democratic institute in that country. Destroyed them because they all answer yes to him. Just imagine when the elections were completed and everybody said, oh, there's a lot of evidence. Bobby Wine is going to come out with all these evidences to show that the election was cheated. I told the people, just keep calm. Nothing's going to change. That guy is going to be sworn in as president, even if the vote show that maybe he didn't win. This is a guy who has molded our country to have people as foreign in position of power. I am here in England. I hold a British passport. Can you imagine if I managed to go into the House of Commons and become a prime minister and change everything, and most of the people who are in a position of power are from Uganda? Can you just imagine that? But that's what has happened in my country of birth, Uganda, whereby people who came to our country as refugees are now in positions of power where no other Ugandans can ever even manage to be. We look at people being given scholarships to study abroad. I tried to register to study for a PhD at Harvard. I was told to pay 40,000 US dollars per lesson. Now we get examples of Ugandans who have been given scholarships by the Museveni regime to study at Harvard, taking 10 lessons of different subjects and paid by the taxpayer. And here I couldn't even afford one lesson at Harvard. You hear Ugandans being given scholarships to study at Oxford here in England. And you wonder, you look at the people who have been given those scholarships to study at Oxford and Harvard, most of them are coming from one part of Uganda or from a neighboring country. In this time, Rwanda. You can imagine the kind of situation that Uganda is now being put into by this regime, whereby most people who welcomed, I remember growing up at my father's place. I was born near Bugema University now, Rucham.
That is in Ruwero district.
In Ruwero district. I'm a Ruwero district boy. And we used to have people, Abakpakasi from Burundi and Rwanda. And those backpackers today are our masters. I remember very well when we had those backpackers, we could barely drink or use the same cup they drank from. If my mom saw me drinking tea from a cup that had been used by that Pakas from Rwanda or Burundi, I would get a caning. We couldn't even eat from the same plates. These people came to Uganda and we welcomed them and we gave them jobs. Now they are our masters. And guess who is taking most of the land in Uganda, especially in my country, Buganda? We don't have money. Somebody comes to you in Buganda with sacks and sacks of money, and you have failed to take your children to school. You can't afford even to buy food or to have a decent living. You have 3 acres. This people can give you an unbelievable amount for your acres, and you just sell. Where are they getting the money? When in Ugandan history have we ever seen a president going out with sacks and sacks of money, dishing it out to the people, the public?
Yes, senior, I think we pick it from there as we try to, let me bring in Desire in that regard. Desire, you have heard Senior Gombia looking at the issue of the members of parliament, and he's saying that it is actually a replica of the whole rotten system and structures of the government. And actually, when you look at this, it is... when you look at this, you would compare it with those that studied the European history about what happened in the French Revolution. And I think it was Joseph who said that these people were driving those Porsche cars going deep in the village, and the people that are being represented are the people that are walking on foot and actually not even having something to eat. How would you relate this to the historical events that are really have happened in other countries, and you see this country is really in that still the same mess?
So, in regards to this question, I'm going to talk about that the class struggle has always existed historically. If we're to look at history, even within Africa as a continent, before colonization came on our shores, we have kingdoms like the Egyptian dynasty, the Kushite dynasty, what was happening in West Africa, what was happening with the Zulu nation. You still had societies turning into a feudalistic system that allowed for classes to exist. So now looking at the African continent now, I'm not going to look at what has happened in other countries very much, because what happened with the French Revolution, and it was spiked also by the class struggle that was happening there, whereby the peasants were looking at the aristocrats, which that was a feudal system, and they fought. But again, yet again, before I look at the French Revolution, I have to look at Haiti and how Haiti freed itself from the colonizer, because they had taken Haitian land, taken ownership of Haitian people, used them as enslaved people on the land. So in terms of, if we look at history, we have to look back to the first coming of Western imperialists to the African continent, and it still dictates how we live today and how we move today. So as I wrap up on this issue of how is all this relevant to our present day to day, is that all these events, especially between African people and the Western world, have managed to create a mediocrity in leadership. Our leaders are expected to be mediocres. They're not willing to change from that aspect. They're comfortable within that aspect. And then we just end up having they're a small group of us. They don't even make up half the population in terms of ratio. How many leaders do we have to actually the existing population of Uganda? They're always a small group of people. They're selfish, they're money-minded, and then they're reactionary. That is always the characteristics that come up of leaders in a very class-divided leadership. One of my favorite quotes is "The poor will eat the rich," and we will see this in human evolution is going to arrive, whereby the poor are going to eat the rich because the numbers don't add up. We have a 1% in Uganda, but I'm gonna just now talk about Uganda and Africa. In Uganda, the illusion is that Museveni and his family, which are called the 1%, and all the people, because you have Museveni, his family, the 1% who are very, very rich, but the illusion that's given to us is that they are just rich and untouchable. But the reality behind that is that they are not as they definitely have money, but all their sources always come from foreigners. So what happens when we cut these very rich, isolated African leaders from their sources of revenue, which is always foreign investment and business agreements? So even as a population, we have a way to jeopardize Museveni's money and how Museveni is making money. And that's by strategically planning and going back to the drawing board and looking at what are the businesses that are actually running this parliament, because we knew these 200 million shillings were coming for a cup. And my question to all these parliamentarians is, how were you even going to the parliament after all before this? We knew the money was coming. We knew they would not be prepared to answer to the people. And we know, like, as how Mr. Cabletta has already said, this is just even a small nibble of the bigger problem, which is we have a 1%, a shrinking middle class, and an expanding what I would call, because in Uganda we have mostly labor workers and we call it nekorera jange. We have a lot of that. So we have an expanding libertarian group. And with that, I advise this ruling class to take heart, because those are the ingredients of a revolution.
Thank you very much, Desire. As we try to go for a short break, Jonathan, I give you 1 minute there's something you want to wrap up. Can you give it up, please?
Yes, I really appreciate the views of all the fellow panelists. And I just want to say this, that the struggle to overthrow this kind of selfish ruling class tends to always have a stillbirth. And you want to compare that with 1945, 1949, during the Bataka riots. You want to compare that even in within Museveni's regime. I mean, even when we removed Obote and Amin, there has always been a stillbirth which we need to deal with. I don't know whether Ugandans can one day wake up and grab their MPs by the collar, just like they did to one district chairman in Wakiso, one Cheyune, and sit them down on the ground and tell them what they honestly expect of them. Give them a real beating if that must be done. We have to really own up our own salvation. It's not going to come from the ruling class. It's not going to come from, we have to be very strategic and very intentional in trying to outdo this kind of shabby job that these people have been doing for all these years. I hope the Ugandans get that point.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, our viewers. The Parliament of Uganda has given 200 million shillings buying cars. Is it really fair? Is it really fair to the Ugandans? That money could do a lot of things, though it's their obligation. But I think the strategists of Uganda need to look at some of these issues, regardless of their legality. The morality dimension of them seems not to be very calling. Let's go for the break. And when we come back, we are going to handle the land issue. And straight on, I'll bring in the Council Jonathan, after the break, just a 2 minutes break. And then we start from there. Thank you very much. Enjoy the break as we come back. Don't go away.
Time takes a toll on everyone, they say. Time is merciless, it won't wait for us to change. Time, I am stressing out, I can't figure out what to say. Oh, time, just give us time. Time, looking back on pictures, and I find it hard to see you and myself in places where we used.
Bannayuganda mbanjululize ekyama buli omu addira amatuuga gasokolemu envumbo. Sijja kukisa bulwadde obutumalawo njatulirawo obulwadde mubunookera eddagala muneetugamu ekkanza omusango gw'eggyeko. Okuva edda Uganda yaffe eno ng'efugirwa ku federo era nga tuli mu ddembe eyajjawo federo yamalawo eddembe. Abakama owa Bunyolo n'Etooro nga bakyafugaani yalabeddemu ndi n'ekkambwe. Kyabazinga n'omugabe wa ankole batta bameka bamanya abalumiriza obutemu. Mutesa yatta bameka n'amawanga agaluba mu Buganda ge yakijjanya agagobe. N'ebitundu ebirala ebya Uganda byonna mu nfuga eya federo nga biri mu ddembe. Kaakati bw'otunuulira Uganda okuva mu 66 efuuka ekyenyinyalwa. Sibalimbawo wewali ebbwa ataataganjulawo tajja kuvumula bwaliri. Abateesa mutunule nkaka baanasumagira ku luno ffenna n'atulendegera. Mazima unitary gavumenti zeza bannabyewanga batulugunya abantu. Mbuba obaagala kikooli obutula n'obukejje n'ennyama abafumba wamu. Bwe wamma buli kali mu muggwanga baakasimbamu olusekeera ne baakanyonyonta. Obwannannyini ku ttaka n'ebibanja obwo baabuggyawo ku mateeka ge bassaawo. Mujjukire ebibasaawulize okuzisiba ku bibanja okubigobamu abantu. Weewuunya okugobwa mu kibanja kya mukaddewo nga n'amalaalo ge gali mmanju. Omunaku okugobwa mu kibanja ky'omwo obadde gwe n'akayumbako kazimbulewo. Byebyo unitary byereeta ab'ebyobufuzi ababbi gye bettanira.
Welcome back from the short break as we try to digest some of the important issues that are prevailing in Uganda. Right now, let's look at the issue of the land in Uganda, the problem of the land, the Milo land. It seems like it is still a thorn in the NRM government's foot. It's very itchy and they feel like they need to pull it out. The president vowed to fight Milo land, and that's why possibly he appointed a Buganda's son, Mayanja, Honorable Mayanja, to be the land minister. Yes, I would like Councillor Jonathan to dig deeply, within 4 minutes, to dig deeply into the issue of land. Why do you think the government seems to be very interested in the Milo land and trying, to see that it is totally erased from the system?
Thank you, Dr. Juko. Let me give you a little background to this question. The land question, probably one of the oldest and most vexing questions Uganda has had, not just not just after independence, but even before independence. So, first of all, land is where, this land is where we were born, the country of our birth, as indeed Senior Gombe has been saying. This is the country, the land where we've been educated, raised and educated. This is the land where we're working, we are tilling this land. We are putting up every investment on this land for our own survival and for those who long come after us. This is the same land where we have our cultural heritage installed in most places. And that defines who we are, our identity. It is the same land where if we died, we will be interred or buried. But if Bible believers, they should know that this is the same land indeed where we were created from. It is important that we take care of it because we derive great benefit from it as well. This same land even appears in the stanzas of our national anthem. This same land, we have vowed to keep it for those who will long come after us. And so the current squabbles about the land, to me, point to really one thing indeed, like I've said before. There is greed, and I think Mr. Museveni is reading the book written by the colonialists as far as making people squatters on their own land is concerned. He's not doing anything different, really, in terms of how, the interest of those who are supposed to be driving livelihoodness from this land is concerned. So in 1900, this is where Milo land stems from. The 1900 agreement made between the British Crown as well as the chiefs of Uganda, who took advantage of the young king then, Daudi Chua, to conclude this kind of agreements. Even though they were sagacious in trying to negotiate a better deal, there was also a little bit of greed. So there are complications about that, but that's not the major point I'd love to make. And indeed, the presence or absence of Milo tenure land system is not the problem. It is the greed. Greed on an individual level, first of all, of the president. Greed to control resources, whether they are public or private or both, and indeed greed for power. Mr. Museveni has tended to want to shorten the longevity of the Kingdom of Uganda, a kingdom that is well recorded about in history, by trying to always play ping-pong games on issues he thinks were of injustice to the people of Uganda or even those whom they accommodated. And so you hear him often saying, probably in disparaging tones, about how we Uganda probably are from Lango or from wherever, and why we shouldn't really be emphasizing our own identity over those of other people, and trying to always, create a divide between us and other people within Uganda by always making sensational, irresponsible, and sectarian statements that tend to anger us. In as much as the land in 1900 was divided largely between a class of chiefs against the peasantry, it should be noted these chiefs negotiated a reserve of land of about 9,000 square miles to be owned by these peasant class, which had not obtained an interest in the 1900 agreement allocations. Secondly, Milo land is unique to Uganda in a sense of the 1900 agreement, as I've just mentioned, but especially because people were able to curtail it around their customs, norms, and traditions. In as much as it created that kind of imbalance, people saw that they could use it to develop their own land, mark their boundaries. And indeed, where there were injustices, they were so resolved within the Busuru and Imvujo law, which tended to cater for those who are landless following the allocations in the 1900 agreement. Now, fast forward, the regime has long tinkered with this issue. First of all, during the hearings of the commission headed by Odoki, which spanned about 3 years, between 1991 to 1993, till the making of the 1995 Constitution. It was in the Constitution that those who had not owned land, rather those who had occupied land 12 years prior to the coming into force of the 1995 Constitution, were free to own it in case it was not occupied by the absentee landlords. That was an unfair and an injustice committed to the people who were owning land indeed in Uganda largely. And these migrants that Mr. Gombi has talked about have benefited from their struggle in Luwero. Now they have settled on miles and miles of land. They own villages all over the country because of that just simple but very technical provision on bona fide ownership of land in Uganda. That is notwithstanding what the people's views to the Udoki Commission what the people's views in the Udoki Commission report were. This same regime, thinking that probably that is not sufficient enough, decided to hold on to lands that were expropriated at the barrel of the gun during Obote's regime in 1967, properties owned by the Buganda Kingdom, even other kingdom areas, and to date, it has not returned all that land to the owners, notwithstanding its mandate, rather not mandate, but the objective in the 10-point program to store, to settle injustices or to correct injustices that were committed in the past for the benefit of stability, peace, unity, and development of this country. This same regime introduced amendments in 2004, which were intended to cause disruption between landlords and tenants, so that on flying on populism, the government could probably overturn the land system or tenure systems in Uganda, particularly in Uganda, where Uganda had been very, very diligent with its Buganda Land Board before it was abolished in 1967 in trying to make sure that the land is well managed in terms of industrial development, in terms of the environmental protection, in terms of every little bit. But this government doesn't care about that. No, you will find forests raised down. You'll find, people owning kind of villages. You'll find people bribing others. We'll find people buying chunks of land in areas where they anticipate development and things of that kind of nature. It's all greed. And President Museveni, unfortunately, thinks that he can settle scores in every contest using force, which is not going to work. I heard his remarks. I heard some Mayanja's remarks. I know about the Attorney General's appointment, but I'm not fazed by all that, by the way. I need to let Ugandans know. What Ugandans should know is that this land, however much tinkering it has gone on, will return to them. And those who have adversely acquired it will one day regret that kind of thing they have done. And this is especially because it is informed by their greed for everything. It's not only land, but even in the minerals contained in that land. And I'm sure you've heard the president mention in personal terms how he owns those minerals, the oil, the gold in Mubende, the oil in Bunyoro, all the other minerals you could mention, maybe the iron ore, there are lots and lots of them. It should be remembered that the people of Uganda have indeed shared their views about land to the Odoki Commission, to the Sempewa Commission in the 90s and 2003 respectively. And in the first place, should not be the concern of the central government. And that's why we are advocating for a federal system of government. This land question, because it is unique to every region within Uganda, should be settled by the governments there. They know the cultural rights that entail it. In Uganda here, we have Sabataka, we have Abataka, we have Obutaka, Abataka and C. We understand how to deal with all these matters better than the central government. They cannot legislate about it.
Thank you, Council. I know, Council, you have a lot about land, and actually, let's speak it from there. Thank you very much for your contribution, and you have given a very good background of the land issue. Let me bring in Senior Gombia in this regard. Senior Gombia, when you look at all this and the explanation that has been given by Council Jonathan, it seems like it's something beyond the land. There is that anger that has accumulated on the president's mind regarding the Buganda factor or the Buganda question. And this seems to be now resurfacing through the land issue, and he's vowing to destruct or to destroy Buganda Miro system, which he says seems to be very unfair to Ugandans and those that want to use the land in Uganda. And it seems to be very much particular to Buganda because, the issue of land and the land tenure system in Uganda seems to be quite different, as Jonathan has mentioned. Would you please give a highlight over that? Yes, we don't hear you. Can you mind your voice, please?
Okay, what happened today?
Yes, we hear you now. We hear you now.
Okay, I'm saying that as a Muganda first and Ugandan second, this is an issue that led me to go to the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies to study African history. Now, Buganda, for as long as he has lived, has always fought to uphold its need to have land, to have people have their own land. When I told people here that I have a cemetery where I will be buried at my home in Lucham, in Luero district, people here are not buried at private cemeteries. I think most of Western world, they are buried at public cemeteries. In Buganda, we have where we bury our people on our land. I know where my grandfather was buried. I know where my great-great-grandfather was buried. My mother is buried in the same place. My brothers, I've lost 5 brothers since I left Uganda. I've lost 4 sisters since I left Uganda. They're all buried on our cemetery. And we have held that cemetery for as long as I can remember, because I am on the land that my father was the heir to my grandfather. I am the heir to my father. So it goes on. Buganda fought terrible wars, especially with Bunyoro about land. Bunyoro was our biggest enemy. We fought wars with the Basoga. We always beat the Basoga. We nearly beat the Banyoros, but they sometimes beat us. Our country, Buganda, is based on land ownership. And anybody who sets out to destroy that privilege that our ancestors gave us, that land is owned. Everyone has land in Buganda. Literally everyone. I don't know if anyone who hasn't said, oh, this is where they will bury me in Buganda. It's not the case. In Buganda, don't bury people in cemeteries, public cemeteries. We all have our own cemeteries. That's how important land ownership is. But the wars we fought, even the Banyankole, the Batoro, Buganda was always victorious. But here comes somebody who cannot even really tell us who his father is. Because, Dr. Joe, I can ask you about your grandfather, and you can tell me who your grandfather is, and your great-grandfather, and your aunties. And they can say, these were my aunties. We have...
And I know where they are buried. I always mention that is sleeping somewhere in a particular land.
Exactly. Now, we've had a president for 35 years whose father we actually don't know about. We don't know about his aunties. We don't know about...
I've read Senior Gombe, I've read news today that President Museveni's auntie has died at 96.
When did we first ever hear about, is it the first time for 35 years we hear that Museveni has got even an auntie? Is it that, I mean, when you come into power, you let everybody know, you tell everybody about your family. Why has the family of Yoweri Museveni been kept so secret that even today I'm surprised you say he's even got an aunt? This is where the problem is that somebody has come into power to destroy the norm of the country that we knew. I am sure even the Acholis, I've never seen a Muganda going to Acholi to try and own landship there. I've never seen a Mcholi coming to Buganda to try and own land. This is how Uganda was made up. When the British came to Uganda, or Buganda as such, they were surprised. First of all, when they came to Buganda, they were surprised to see that our people were dressed. They were not walking naked. And I said, hang on a minute. You people, you're dressed. We're dressed in Ruvugo. Most people were Dressrobogo. Then they found a system that was similar to the system here in Westminster, where I am now. We had judges, we had heads of prisons, we had heads of police. That shocked the British people. And for as long as Buganda stood, we have stood to fight for our land. Our land is our identity. And that is what is annoying me personally, and I think for most of the Baganda, that our identity is now somebody's trying to take that identity away from us. We as Baganda, we are land owners. That's what we have been for as far as this history says. We've always been landowners. Now, because we don't have money, somebody comes to you and you have to sell because you go to take your children to school. You go to feed your family and you sell out. And who are you selling to? You're selling to somebody who's from Rwanda. I'm not speaking against the Rwandese people. I have lots of friends from Rwanda. Lots of them. I'm not speaking against the Banyankole. I have lots of Banyankole. I know so many Banyankoles who are fed up with the person who is in power today, who claims to come from their country. You remember that when Yoweri Museveni was trying to start a war against Milton Obote, his master, he did not get a chance to start the war in Ankole. They said, they told him, we cannot host you. Where did he go? He went to Rwanda, especially in my area, in Luero. I'm a Luero resident. He came to us and we welcomed him. And now, people are angry at us because we, the people of Luero, welcomed him, gave him every assistance he needed to get into power. And now he's taking away our land, questioning our names, questioning our kabaka, questioning everything. Come on. This is Buganda. And every Muganda, whatever we are, will fight to uphold the belief that we are landowners and that is who we are.
Thank you, Senior Gombea, for the insight and that kind of analysis. Let me bring in Senior Carburetor in this regard. Mr. Carburetor, if you look at what is really happening, I know it's happening in other areas, but it seems like it is beyond what people think, the land issue or the Milo land issue. The president or the government, the regime might have seen something beyond what we are discussing. Would you please give an insight over the issue of the land and what do you get sense out of it?
Thank you. The thing is, what is happening in Buganda is not different from what's happening across the country. I'll start by telling you that if you go to northern Uganda, where there was a war for almost 20 years of this regime, and people were taken off their land and taken into, internally displaced people's camps. When the war ended, people went back and the land had been taken, So you're forced away from the land because of war, and you go into, some kind of, very congested surroundings where you're living in huts and everything, and because that's where you're provided for protection by the Uganda People's Defense, army. And when you go back, the war is over. Now we go back and till our land. There's no land. And the thing is, for the most part in northern Uganda, they had communal land systems, communal land. So there's no real legal hold on to the land, but they had no issues until these people came. They had no issues. People knew that this land is communal. It's used like this. Some land was owned by specific people, but there were land which was used for grazing and things like that, which was, communal. So this land, anybody can graze their animals here. It doesn't belong to anybody in particular. And it was a system that was working for them. It was destroyed. Then they came back, their cows had been taken in northern Uganda, in Lango especially, but also a bit in Acholi. The cows had been taken. For every 5 years, he goes and promises them that we've got money to restock your cows, and that is a lie. And if there's one thing Museveni is good at, it's a lie. I think he would even fail a polygraph test speaking the truth. So he went and you know, and he keeps on saying they will restock the cows, and that doesn't happen. But ultimately, I mean, you think what is Salim Saleh doing in Guru? He's buying square and square miles of land from very, very poor people who have been made poor by his government, and now he's owning. The same thing he has done in Nakaseke, in Luwero. He's now doing in northern Uganda, and they are doing in other parts of the country. So I know, of course, a lot of you people are, you know, about Uganda, and so your outlook is so much Uganda, and I really, really appreciate that. But let me give you the whole scope of it. Now, when you go, for instance, to Bunyoro, which is the other kingdom which was very organized like Uganda and had almost a similar system to Uganda when, you know, historically. Now, when you go to Bunyoro, for now, Bunyoro it's different. Actually, the trampling on there started even by the British, who are paying the Bunyoro, repaying them for being, fighting colonialism. So because of Kabalega's resistance, the British decided that they were going to do certain things to Bunyoro. I've told you about that before. There was a genocide, which has even been acknowledged, by the kingdom there in the UK. There was a genocide. There was a number of things there, and also deliberate things too. I mean, you've heard of how they spread syphilis and so on, and how it affected those people and so on and so forth. But here is the thing: what the British did, they got almost every elevated area a hill and made it a forest reserve. So they made it this is a forest reserve. This is a forest reserve. So they made sure that the indigenous people are only in valleys. All the hills are made as forest reserves, even when there were no forests. So nobody could own land there. Now, what this government has done in following up with that, because they want to destroy all order. Now, unlike the British, who are more interested in destroying Bunyoro, these ones are more interested in destroying Uganda. Now, what these people have done is, when the indigenous Bunyoro, of course, realizing that, I mean, forest reserve, there's no forest here, so they started trying to settle in those places. They would be chased out. This is a forest reserve. And actually, in the mapping of the country, it would be allocated as a forest reserve. Now, when people from other tribes came and started settling there, some of them, Balaro, who had guns, they entered into the forest reserves, and this time nobody chased them away and told them these are forest reserves. So then they came and took up all these forest reserves, and now they are landowners there. And then the interesting thing is they even had guns. So even when the indigenous people would come and say, how come we've never been allowed to till these lands, and you come somehow and you're allowed to till them and nobody chases you away, then guns come out. And that has been happening. And there's a big problem brewing in that part of the country as well. And it's a silent brewing problem, but because of course I'm from there, I noticed that I noticed during the campaign that it's so much, simmering, a lot of anger simmering under there, and it is as a result of this policy here. Then you go to other places, like let's say Teso. Teso, same thing. People, land is being bought. Okay, I would even move down to Soka, let's say, where forests, where people could not be allowed. The same thing that happened to Bunyoro, where people could not be allowed. Now the people selected by the regime come and own those forest reserves and things like that. So in reality, it is a whole national plot to get people off land, so to speak, because land is the cardinal resource. And as Mr. Nugombia said, land is a part of a people's identity. This is where, because you cannot have a true identity without a geographical location. So you need a geographical location. This is where we are. If you want, I belong to this tribe, I belong to this nationality. This is where we exist, okay, as a people. So that is, and it's not just that he's trying to destroy. When I was speaking on Thursday on the program, I was talking about destroying people's the uniqueness of their identity. Now, where I totally disagree with Mr. Gombia is maybe because Uganda has changed a lot since we were last here. There are so many Baganda who are owning land in Acholi, and there are so many Acholi who are owning land in Uganda, and it is their right as long as it is part of Uganda. However, you know, when there is a systematic attempt by the regime to come and take away a system like the Maryland system that has worked for them for quite a bit, then you know that there is something seriously wrong in that place, because Baganda have been very welcoming to other tribes, by the way, more than any other tribe. They have been extremely welcoming. People have come from different tribes and settled in Buganda and, you know, made a living there. But where the Baganda are beginning to have a problem is when these people now are almost seeming to take on an ownership, you know, general ownership, apart from ownership of their local space, which they bought, and so on. And then when they are being pushed, and then when they seem to belong to one side, you know, and then they are being pushed by foreign forces, and I mean, government officials and so on. Now that's where a problem really arises. And now, while I do not want to tribalize anything, the one thing I hate to do is tribalize anything. But every tribe, every culture needs to have its unique identity. For instance, even in the UK, you hear of people there, while people like Henry Gombia have been welcomed there and they are citizens there and everything, you see that the British were a bit concerned. The reason perhaps why they voted Brexit, they're a bit concerned that there are going to be all these immigrants and they will lose their unique British Englishness or Britishness, because there are things which are unique about them. They're a unique country. When you go to France, you expect a certain, you know, uniqueness of France. Now, why these countries might welcome, you know, so many immigrants, they don't want to lose the uniqueness. Even you see in Germany, at first they were welcoming of all these refugees from Syria and so on. But then when these people come and try to change the German way of life and the way the Germans think they should be, that's where a problem comes. Now, that is the same problem we're having here. When people come into a country, I mean, rather into a region, let's say, and then they try to change the cultures and the norms and the things, that's where a real problem comes. And that's where the people who belong to that culture feel the need to stand up and fight. So the whole issue of land, the one resource these people have still yet to completely conquer is land. I told you this Chisanja 2021-2026 is supposed to be like their crowning moment, or everything they have been trying to achieve they're supposed to crown it off. Like, this is the tipping point for everything they have been trying to achieve. And what is that? The oil deals are being done right now. They are going to make sure they belong to certain people within that 1%. Really, it's really not even 1%. It's like 0.1%. Basically, relatives, friends, and in-laws within there. And they'll take all the money accruing from the oil that is meant for Uganda. The mineral deals, all those are being done. I told you how they have invaded tourism right now, and all, you know, the game parks, they are right in there completely. Now, the last enemy, so to speak, left to conquer as far as they are concerned is land. Now, that's why Museveni is coming. Now, these other ones, he feels he's significantly made progress. Now, that's why he's coming into the area of land, and the places he's going to start. By the way, I'll tell you this, he's not starting here. It's more or less ending here, because the damage that has been done, that he's planning for Uganda, was done to Bunyoro long time ago. So he's coming and he's arriving at Buganda. Now, if you can dismantle a system that has kept sanity in Buganda over land, then he will achieve. Because, you know, he achieves from confusion. When there is a clear-cut system that this is Crown land, this is Maryland is bought and sold like this is the system that governs it, then when there is clarity, he cannot come and, you know, take control. So what he does is he comes up with the laws which bring confusion. And then in the confusion is where he comes and takes complete control over everything. And then now suddenly people are running to him, Mr. President, help us here. That has been his tactic all along. When he finds order and he wants to take control over it, he will dismantle that order, and then eventually all those people will be running to him. And then in the process, he takes control of whatever resource those people were actually fighting over. So when they go to him helping, that he will adjudicate between them and say, now this one belongs to this one, the other belongs to the other. No, eventually it ends up belonging to him. So now that's what it's here. And by the way, I'll let me end by saying this.
Okay.
It's been an ongoing process. You see, the land laws, they have been making land laws, because they started making land laws way after the 1995 Constitution, when there was no outcry for an extra law on that area. And laws, especially those that come about like that, usually arise out of an outcry. Okay, let's say there's a lot of gun violence. Let's say in America, and what people are being shot and what, then there's an outcry. Then they enact a law on who should buy guns and so on. So usually laws would come from outcries, but there was no outcry at the time. And then he went and created a law which actually caused the outcry. Now it's supposed to be the other way. Outcry brings the law. Now for him, he used the law to cause an outcry, because the law actually came and was vague and created confusion. And now confusion is his playing field. So now as soon as the confusion came into question, then suddenly people are running to him. We need this, Bivanja owners, what, and blah, blah, blah. And then now it's been progressing since. I remember there was a gentleman called Mulindo Monge about the 1999. He was educating on CBS. He was educating Baganda about the new land law, because there were so many things which had been put in there which were subtle, and these people would not have known them. The kind of things which you wake up in the morning and your hands have been tied and you did not even know when they were tied. So now this man came and was really educating people, and actually now there was an outcry. People were saying, so this is what the law is all about. And, and they wanted this to pass, from under our feet without us not knowing about it. Now, what he did is he went and got Muniru Mongo, of course, and, compromised him and, gave him all this VTO and so on. And then Muniru Mongo ceased to be the voice of the people in regard to land. So what I'm trying to say is, this is a program. It has been happening from about 1995, 1996. As soon as he won that election, very heavy support from the central region. Now he comes and he starts doing. Now, after the 2021 election, when now the Baganda said no, and they really, really voted en masse against him. Even the figures that are being shown are not true. They voted largely against him. His loss in Buganda was even big, of course, than has been presented by Bakam and his fake figures. So when he saw that was the case,
that created the anger.
Exactly. Now there are two ways you could have dealt with Buganda after that loss, after that resounding electoral loss. One of them would have been appeasement, but that's what I think the older he has gotten, the more bullish he's become. Now he's chosen not to go down the way of appeasement. He's chosen to go down the way of crush you. Since you don't support me, I'm going to come and crush you. And now the way to crush the Baganda that is left, really, because they have been crushed in so many ways. The way that is left right now is to take the land away. And the other immediately after the election, he actually stated something which I found very interesting to come from somebody like him. He said that he's the one who said this, not myself. He said that, all this Buganda is full of Banyarwanda. And I said,
that was
knowing him, he doesn't just say things. He says things which are calculated. And he was trying to push something, Baganda, don't think that you are so strong as a tribe. You've actually been infiltrated. The way police surround a criminal and then they start speaking on the microphone. You've been surrounded. You have nowhere to run. The idea is come out, surrender. So he's telling the Baganda, you've been, Baba Yingiride, they are right in the middle of you. That was the message. Then afterwards, he's coming for the Mairoland. By the way, it is now, it's gloves off. Museveni versus, it's totally gloves off. I'm telling you, Museveni versus Buganda, gloves off. Actually, not even versus Buganda, versus Uganda in regard to this land thing. Gloves off. He's no longer pretending. He's coming for it, and he feels he has the entitlement to it. So it's going to be bloody.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much, Joseph, for the sounding analysis that you've given us. As we try to wind up, let me bring Desire to wrap up this issue, because it seems to be time bad and we have one point, another issue to discuss. Desire, would you, Joseph has said that the president is now gloves off to Buganda, particularly when it comes to land. The anger that is expressed in the issue of land, actually he even appointed a Muganda or son of Buganda to be the state minister in charge of land. What do you take from this kind of approach with the president trying, to show openly that he's, whether you like it or not, he's going to get the Milo land off from Buganda system? Can you please give your highlight?
So when we talk about, I'm sorry, but I'm also going to mostly talk about Buganda. It's when, first of all, we have to realize, we have to reflect on some things that are very important. How long has Buganda or Bunyoro or Ankole existed? All those kingdoms were already countries and nations and have thousands of years of history to back them up. How long has Uganda existed as a country? Uganda has only existed for 100, I think, if I do my math right, because that was 1900 Buganda agreement led to Uganda, and now we are in 2021. So that means that Uganda has existed for a total of 120 years. And that's being put against the history of 1,000 years. How long has Uganda as an independent nation existed? That also boils down to, we celebrated our Jubilee not so long ago. We're looking at about 50 years going into 60 years. How long has Museveni been president? For those 50 years going into 60, 35 years. So we should not underestimate where he's going, but it also seems that Museveni has underestimated what already exists. What is happening now with Milo land? Museveni is not the first person in history to come up and disregard the rich cultural history and norms that Buganda as a nation had. The British did it. When they first came to Uganda, they were so surprised by everything there, to the point that they tried to insinuate that it was the Greeks that came through Egypt that led to the system that we have, that Africans cannot have such a system, and it has to be some European intrusion into the assembly of such a system. And it was not just a system, that it was a political system. It went into politics, it went into, it was a justice system, we had a chief justice, it went to distribution of land, and it went to the welfare of the people. So Museveni is not the first one to try insinuate that Ugandans might, that Baganda might have some lineage to Luo. That was also said through history. But ethnically, Uganda as an ethnic group, we all know comes from the Bantu, who stretch all the way from west to the south of Africa, to Zulu Nation. So as we talk about the struggle for power and land and what's happening in Uganda, yes, I agree that, yes, Museveni has opened up a war on Uganda as a whole. And why now Buganda is at the center stage is because of course, that system that our ancestors made sure that we have. That system has existed for over thousands of years. That system even outlives some countries that we praise a lot, like the United States of America. Buganda has been strong and existed before even the United States of America that is so looked upon. So what I'm trying to say is that it is not surprising that Buganda yet again is at a center stage of the total disassembly of Uganda, because Buganda was at the center stage of the assembly of Uganda. It only makes sense then. Let's not always forget our history, because these cards come back into play. Because to assemble Uganda, they had to do the Buganda Agreement. To totally disassemble Uganda and make it something, I don't know what Museveni wants to make it, but to make it into something that is of his liking and his small clique and group, Buganda must be disassembled. So generally is also one thing that we ought to caution ourselves on is a reference to the word tribe. Tribes do not exist. Tribes is a word that was introduced by colonial entities to try and convince us that our grouping according to family and our ancestry and our lineage and how we governed ourselves only equated to a tribe. Never has it equated to a tribe. Those were nations that were destroyed. Those were countries of their own. Buganda existed, Ankole existed, Bunyoro existed. So when we demand for a federal system of governance, according to our lineage and ancestry and our cultural norms, we are not demanding for a federal system of governance due to the tribes that we come from. I view myself as coming from Buganda nation. I don't come from a Buganda tribe. That has never existed. That is an illusion. That is a corruption of information that the British people used. And the one thing that I must say the British, the French, the Germans are unique for is anti-civilization and colonization. Those were words that they put into vocabulary of a language that they forced us to learn and speak today and communicate. Because when our relatives or like our grandparents speak of Buganda, they say Egwanga, which translates to a nation. But when we're taught in school, we're taught that it's a tribe, which is historically incorrect and does not and should not even be used. So when we talk of federal and wanting to be in federal system of governance, we should always look at it as we don't want it because we come from these tribes. Because I don't come from a tribe. I have never come from a tribe. We come from nations full and rich of history that stretches thousands of years. And history again is coming back to haunt us and will always come back to haunt us. But it's always how we apply history to into our present to plan a future that actually is inclusive and is and equates to and supersedes our history. So to conclude this, and the issue of land is that, and the issue of land and what's happening with land in Uganda / Buganda and what has happened in Bunyoro, it all comes down to one thing. I remember I said this a long time ago or before, and we all know this. The war of the indigenous people will always be the war of the land. The displacement of our ancestors was a war of land. But why the land? Because the land holds the minerals. Why the minerals? Because they invested into the systems that, again, come about to exploit us. Why we haven't been totally displaced? Because we offer labor on that land. That's the only reason we haven't been totally displaced. But in places whereby you're not offering labor, like in Canada, like, for example, I'll use examples like Canada and the United States, the indigenous people are then sent into reserves because they're not going to offer labor to that land. And then the land is exploited by foreigners on that land. So we must go back, revise our history, know our history. Because if you do not know your history or you do not know what led to your existence, then the colonial project is underway and total erasure of us as a people will happen eventually.
Thank you very much, Desire. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the land issue is very, very pertinent because land represents identity. Identity in terms of recreation, identity in terms of knowledge, identity in terms of belonging, and all that. Therefore, people have to, respect the land issue because it should be handled in the best way. As we know, it might bring out another catastrophe in Uganda. As we try to, I have one topic which I'll give each one just 2 minutes to make comment as we go into the callers because we are time bad.
Before we go there, Doctor, can I say something?
Yes, please.
I wanted to ask Joseph. He's talked about Baganda buying land in Acholi. I remember in 1985, I was traveling to Kasese with my girlfriend then, who is now my wife, and we saw Kasese so beautiful. I said, "Oh, let's try and buy land here." We went around and I said, "Oh, no. You're coming from Uganda? There's no way we can sell you land." And now have things changed to the better that we can buy land in Western Uganda and actually, because I cannot understand why a Muganda could actually go to Acholi to buy land. I've been to Acholi and I cannot see, unless you're buying for business, I can't see a Muganda going to buy land. Not that, I mean, if you're used to being in Buganda, I can't see myself going to Acholi and buying land because we have enough land in Buganda for anybody. And I'm sure the Acholis, that's why it would be very difficult for Muganda to go to Acholi and buy land. Have things changed for the better now that you can buy land anywhere where it wasn't the same case before?
Yes, Joseph, you can. Would you answer Henry within
Very
within
briefly.
2 minutes?
Yes, Mr. Henry Gombia, I know Baganda who have plenty of farmland in Acholi, and there are things that grow very well there and are very easy to grow there, like rice. I know Baganda who have rice farms in Acholi, in Amuru, in places like that, and they're actually employing Acholi people on their farms. So yes, it's a bit difficult. To be honest with you, Mr. Gombia, in the 35 years you've been away from Uganda, there's been a lot of interlinkages between these tribes, because so many Baganda have married people from the west, from where, even people from the north have married before. So there's a fusion of all these things. And also answering Desire about tribes, and when the colonialists, when all African countries got independence and they had the first summit for the Organization of African Unity, OAU, they decided that one of the first and major decisions they took, which in my opinion was very, very good, is that regardless of how reckless or unrealistic the dividing of the nations was, they should be left as they were. Because if people had gone into dividing, saying this country should have been cut out like this, we would still be fighting up to now. So they said the Bazungu decided in the Berlin Conference, they done demarcation, and they said, regardless of how unreasonable they were, let's just retain them and move on from there. So now, whatever political system we come up in Uganda as a country has to be acceptable to 56 tribes. Now, that is the challenge for everybody. But you people have to understand that the problems that we are having in Buganda and in other regions are created by a government which hates this country. When we have a government which actually loves the people of this country, those problems will not exist. They are created by one person. So we are dealing with a massive problem, but the cause is just one. You see, it's just one. It's like having one underlying sickness and it's creating all these symptoms. And when you deal with the sickness and it is curable, immediately all the symptoms vanish. So, Mr. Gombia, I can assure you, all your worries concerning the land issue, the Bataka issue, and all that, all those things will vanish when the underlying sickness that is called Museveni, Yoweri Kaguta, is out of the way. That one I can assure you. Because Baganda, Banyoro, all these people have suffered the same branch of the same man. And there is a willingness by these people to move in a certain direction. So when we are discussing, when I am discussing, I'm discussing it holistically, the nation. But the problems of Buganda are not unique to Buganda in Museveni's regime, okay? Because the same creator of these problems has created them elsewhere. Only maybe a few varying other symptoms. So you people of Buganda descent, don't worry. It is going to be well. With your land, it is going to be well. With everything to do with you, it's going to be well with everybody. But we have to come up with an administrative system that is agreeable to the rest of the country. Otherwise, the country goes into chaos. And that's what we don't want. So to create, as I told you, maybe some of this, it's unrealistic to get people from, these Bantus and mix them with the Nilotics and so on by the Berlin Conference and so on and so forth. But we decided after independence, we retain those boundaries.
We agree with what was demarcated.
Yes, we have to move at that level.
Yes, the debate seems to be getting hotter because it seems like Jonathan wanted to come in. Just 1 minute, please.
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. Not to disregard entire Desire's point, as well as Mr. Gombia's, I'm yet to actually look at statistics from the Lands Ministry or Registry regarding land allocation in Uganda, ownership in Uganda by Baganda in other regions of Uganda. To really be convinced about your point. But back to Desire's point about nationhood, Buganda, which means bandos, is a collection of different ethnicities. And I'm sure you know that very well. Besides what you would call the indigenous Baganda, you have the Banyala, you have the Baruri, you have the Bakochi, all these form part of the nation of Buganda. And Buganda had an active assimilation policy that would even take care of those who had migrated from other regions to come and settle in Buganda, and they were by that virtue, they became Bakanda. The Kabaka is of Buganda, not of the Baganda. I mean, I think we need to get that entirely correct. I feel very uncomfortable as well to the attribution of tribes and tribalism here and there. Thank you very much.
Just two minutes on the issue of Honorable Nabanja, the Prime Minister, has bad members of Parliament who have been giving out money, food to the people, and said this is jeopardizing the government programs when they give out money. And they said they will be arresting members of Parliament who give out money. And a very same note, I want you to, whoever comes up, to discuss, to just bring in the issue of Honorable Nabanja, decrying of her relatives being threatened because possibly of the pressure that she's putting on suppliers of government, like food and all the other requirements. Can I start with Council Jonathan, please? Just within 2 minutes, because we are time back. We want to get out.
I beg your pardon, I couldn't hear you very well.
Yeah, what I'm saying, just in 2 minutes, we want to indulge into the discussion of Honorable Nabanja, the problem of when she said that giving out food is illegal among members of Parliament who have been giving out food and other requirements to the people because of COVID. And also, she decried of the problem of receiving threats from members of possibly government people who are corrupt, and saying that she's also jeopardizing their function. So I want you in 2 minutes to wrap up with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, that's not unique to hear. Just the other day before the elections during the first lockdown, similar sentiments were shared by the president, and people were being beaten. Zake MP, Honorable Zake, was one of those who suffered at the hands of government for giving out food to the needy within his community, his constituents. And I find it really unnecessary for politicians who, having received billions of money by Ugandans donated to cater for other Ugandans, can now come and posture that they're the only ones entitled to provide for these people. First of all, they failed in the first place to provide the food that they promised to all Ugandans. They, according to their own records, in the Ministry of Health, they were able to distribute only food to 2 districts within Uganda, that's Mukono and Wakiso. And even then, not all households actually did receive food. So I find it very, 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 very dramatic, if not posturing, for anyone to say that they should be the only ones entitled to distribute food to Ugandans. But this is what precisely the mafia system in Uganda has quite done, is always play a card that tends to depart people from the point of focus. You can't defocus people all the time. A time comes when people do wake up and can really see through issues, the grand scheme of things, and resort to lifting themselves out of that kind of crisis. And I think Nabanja is suffering from a bit of populism at the moment. Probably when she gets, some knuckles here and there, a few months down the road, she will be put in her place properly. I'm not very expectant.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you very much. We can't go beyond that. Let me bring in Senior Gombia. What's your take on the situation that Honorable Nabanja is decrying of the threats for her life, for the relative's life when it comes to, her pressure on government suppliers? We can't hear you, Mr. Gombia. Your voice, please. Your sound, please.
I don't know what happened. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, you're okay. You're fine now. You're good to go.
My answer to that is from the experience I've had here in Westminster democracy, whereby a member of parliament has a right to go to her or his constituents and help them in whatever way they can. So if Ugandan MPs have got money to spread around to their constituents, as long as they're not breaking the law and reporting what they have done to the authorities, I don't see anything wrong with that. And for a minister to come out and say, or the prime minister to come out and actually tell MPs not to help their constituencies, that's unheard of. I think MPs should have the right to do whatever they can for their constituencies, because those are the people who vote them into power.
Thank you, Senior Gombia. Desire, here is a situation that Honorable Nabanja gives out. I mean, the government failed to give out food. Even the money scheme failed because there are few people that have complained of. I mean, there are very many people that have complained that they haven't received the money, regardless of saying they were given. Do you see it as ironical for the government or the Honorable Prime Minister to say, to bar members of parliament for giving people, and yet people are really needy?
For years now, everything that the Ugandan government does has always been ironic. Like, this is not very surprising. We expected this to happen. We expected there not to be any outcomes from Nabanja's, from Prime Minister, let me give her honors, Prime Minister Nabanja's efforts. And it's now that the efforts have failed, all of a sudden there's an excuse for your failure in execution, of which your method of execution was already not calculated and was going to fail anyway. But then this has to do with prime ministers who now are receiving huge chunks of money, members of parliament who are now receiving these chunks of money, and all members of parliament have been doing a phenomenal job buying food for people. Then why are our people still dying of hunger? Why are there so many people facing food insecurity? Why is it that I want to see one day members of parliament come together and say, we're actually going to build and put up an infrastructure from all the money that has been embezzled out of the people of Uganda. When will that ever happen? Like, members of parliament, you're not rich and Uganda is not a charity case. That's number one. That money rightfully belongs to the people of Uganda. You're not rich and Uganda is not a charity case. You're just a placeholder until Museveni doesn't need you anymore. And to Prime Minister Nabanja, if not this, what else would she be doing really? There is nothing. Sorry, if not this, what else do we expect from her? If not this, what else would she be doing?
Exactly.
So you mean it's just making herself busy as Jonathan?
Yeah, she's on the job at the moment. She is keeping busy, and this is where she's been put. And to be publicly, what's the word in English? Aswaza, like, when we went into this election, it was Tugenda College. Well, I have to say some words in Luganda because I don't know the direct translation in English, but Tugenda Kubalabisa, Tugenda College, government. But the irony is, because always Museveni's things have always bitter comedy at the end. Museveni is making them look a fool.
The simple English explanation of that is, we'll show them.
Yes. Now Museveni is showing them and they're looking foolish. They're falling. Be it opposition, be it NRM, but as long as you're not in his dynasty clique, you're not looking great. And your political future is done with. Anyway, that's all I have to say about Nabanja.
Thank you very much. Thank you. As we try to wrap up, I'll bring in Joseph. But before I bring Joseph, everybody, I would like to tell you that we are receiving some calls for something like 10-15 minutes. We're gonna receive calls. All those that have sent the voices, please send them as quickly as possible. Just 1 minute, send that click, and then the producer will be giving them to us within the next possibly 2-3 minutes after Joseph has analyzed bringing his point regarding Nabanja's issue. Yes, Joseph, on issue of
Doctor, before you go
Yes,
on, there's an issue I want us to settle here and now. I've heard you referring to people there as honorables. I have an issue with that, and I think I told you in my message before today.
I think we're gonna solve that off air, Mr. Gombia. With great honor.
Okay,
Yes, all right. Yes, Mr. Cabrera, would you please come in and try to submit an issue concerning Honorable Banja is actually decrying of her life, the relative's life, and none of you have talked about it. Would you please, as you submit, please also to address that issue, Mr. Cabrera?
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, what the MPs were doing was very noble, extremely noble. And I'll tell you, there are people who are saying, no, they should have given hospitals medicine. There are people who they don't need medicine. They need food. Because
that's the basic.
That's where it starts. Actually, a lot of people need medicine because they are not even feeding well. If they were feeding, a lot of the sicknesses for which they are taking medicine would not even have occurred in the first place. So you heard of a man who I think was called Katongole, who died en route to getting food from Mitiana, where that gentleman, what's it called, Zake, Honorable Zake, was giving out food, and the man died. He was starving in his house, and they have so many people who are starving in their houses. And for so many Ugandans, the only connection they have to government is their member of parliament. That's why I wasn't so angry when the MPs got 200 million, by the way, because none of them is going to buy a car of 200 million. I can guarantee you that they are not, because there's a lot of pressures down there. Actually, I spoke to one MP who told me the money touched the account on Wednesday. He told me, and it was on Friday, he told me, I can guarantee you now there's not a single MP who has even a coin on that account. Many of them are heavily indebted. The banks took a chunk of it, most of it, or constituents or things like that. They have to go. Because even in places which are up country where the lockdown has not bite people in terms of going to work and getting a daily earning, there's been drought in many parts of the country. So there's a combination of the lockdown, then drought. Then also the lockdown has brought so many other issues, because in the absence of transporting of food from up country to Kampala, food, the prices of food have fallen so much, and the people are becoming poor as a result. For instance, I was seeing a story on TV the other day of a bunch of matoke going for 500 shillings, a huge quota of matoke going for 500 shillings, and the man sold 2 for 1,000 shillings because he needed salt. Now, what makes the matoke become so cheap is because you're selling it within your locality where everybody has matoke. Now, matoke would get its value if it was transported to Kampala, where there are no people who are planting matoke. You understand? But now, with that taken away, it has zero value within that same locality because everybody has a rusuku of matoke. So now, that being said, the MPs actually we are doing a very noble work, because for most of the Ugandan people, the only connection they have to come, because all the social services collapsed, the hospitals collapsed. I mean, there's not hardly anything there. You will not go to anybody. RDCs are just state functionaries. There is nobody who you can go to as a Ugandan to get any connection to government apart from your member of parliament. So members of parliament are acting as administrative officers, acting as legislators, and all these things. So that's why I wasn't even so angry about their 200 million. I know what they go through in their constituents. They have to distribute here and there and what. Otherwise, you look callous. Now, the reason the government stopped them is because it's a battle for populism, as the lawyer man said there. Nabanja is suffering for populism. That's why she's now crying, oh, people are persecuting me. Oh, that's just Katemba, really. She's just, it's very irritating, by the way, because we are going in a bad time. She failed to do the simple duty of distributing money to people who had been allocated. Then they come and give us an excuse that some people were were paid twice the amount because somebody's apparently double-clicked. I mean, what kind of rubbish is that? So she fails in simple duty, and then she's posturing and trying to be populist. And then when MPs come and actually doing some work, helping people, then she sees they are stealing the show. So they must be stopped. And it's all about show. Remember that it's show. So when somebody, if you have the power to stop somebody and he's stealing the show, go ahead and stop him because you want to steal the show. So now she's crying foul the next day. And by the way, she's making a very big mistake. She will not be prime minister for long if she continues along those lines. I know the reasons for which Museveni appoints people and has nothing to do with anything Nabanja is doing. So if she continues on that trajectory, she might not even last a year as prime minister. That's a warning to her if she's listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gombia, you had within 1 minute as we wait for the callers and the voices.
Mr. Kableta, can you tell the audience what 200 million Ugandan shillings, what type of car can it buy? And do you have an example of any MP who's bought a car from that kind of money?
200 million actually does not buy a terribly good car because, because first of all, Mr. Gombia, the taxes on cars here are extreme. They are going almost to 100%. So what 200 million, the equivalent in pounds, would buy in the UK is not the same as what it buys here because much of it goes to the government anyway. If you bought a car of that much, that's number one. But number two, they are not buying those cars. They are not. They actually not. I know. Not many of them are. And also, you have to know that a lot of these MPs after the election are heavily indebted because Uganda's politics is so commercialized. People are not voting for somebody unless he gives money. And I know so many MPs who I was speaking to one MP who got elected and he was very angry with the electorate because they had squeezed every nickel out of him and get elected. So when he finally crossed the line, he said, these guys, I don't feel anything for them because they made me, have to mortgage my house and what to get to this place. So he was angry. So now when he goes there and gets his 100 million, the voters have already gotten their share of that by squeezing. Now, if voters could vote issues and rather than voting money, then we could actually, because somebody was angry, MPs are getting 200 million. I said, let anybody who has asked an aspiring politician for money has no moral right to question them getting that money. If you're the kind of person, and those are few, who stand up and say, I just want to hear your ideas. I don't want any coin from you. Just tell me your ideas and you get my vote based on what you say in regard to what you're going to do for us. If you're that kind of person, then you have the moral right to come up and question that. If you're the kind of person who says, buy booze, buy this, buy that for us to get, buy airtime and so on, then shut up. Because this is the reality of Ugandan politics. And this is what Museveni has made it into. Very commercialized, so he's the beneficiary. You don't have money, he distributes money to his NRM MPs, Remember the famous $379 million, which was for a Loboa hospital, for the hospital in Loboa. Do you know what they told the NRM MPs? This is the money we are going to give you for campaigns. So they passed the budget, even if everybody knows there is not going to be a hospital in Loboa built. No, it has not even, the ground has not even been cleared yet. So, but that's the money, which is, they come up with an excuse, we are going to build a hospital. There is no hospital, it's not going to be there, I can guarantee you that. But it was given to NRM MPs to give them that advantage so that they have authority. So, my point is,
Joseph, thank you.
MPs were doing a noble job, and we are grateful for them while they did it before they were stopped. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's have some voices, and then after that we wrap up because the producer wants me out of the studio right now. The producer, can you send us the voices and we listen to them and then we see, you have a caller, we can have to listen to the call and then we get out of this place.
Yes, our host, Dr. Katerega, all our special guests, from Mr. Kableta to Mr. Gombia, the Council, and Desire. Nyowa atenyi, hangiriza, mwejukuru wa Kabalega, hangiriza, omwana wa Bunyoro, Kableta, nkwenda obaze ebigambo mu Lunyoro akiri ebigambo nka 2 3. Yes, because oli mwana wa Bunyoro. However, my request to you, Mr. Kabuleta, please, you on the course. You know this thing because you on the ground. I request you kindly, please, fight for all these battles, both internally and externally. We cannot accept this. Our identity is on land ownership, and all identities depends from the blood. Amagaita gaitwa kugatwara because we are not observing this thing by practical. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And if we have other voices, would please play them. And
for real, Mr. Cabrera, there you don't get the point. You can't say the member of parliament are doing a noble cause to give out food. Instead, they are training their constituents to be paupers, beggars, just like the president does, where he goes and gives out envelopes, yellow envelopes every time he goes to meet the people out there. So I don't support them. How long are they going to maintain that? How long they are going to maintain that? They can't maintain that because they give just food for 4 days and the lockdown takes 41 days. How will they maintain that? Please, not normal. Not normal. They will just come out with resolution how to enable the people go out and work as they maintain the SOPs of Corona. Thank you.
thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. More callers or more voices?
Thanks, UNN, for the wonderful show. This is Tyler Abdul. What has caught my attention today is that we were nations and not tribes before the colonialists came. Thanks and big up.
Yeah, thank you.
And about the Nabanja issue, there is no way the government can give money to its citizens. Yes, in the last lockdown, people contributed money, but the government instead embezzled the money. So there is no way the government can then give us the money that we already have.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, the Tower Committee and the board and the hosts and also our glad Senior Gombia, Kableta, Katelega, and the rest, Desire, and another gentleman there. Thank you very much, Desire, to enlight. And I want also the board to more enlight the word tribe and a nation. Here we are nation. Tribe means a primitivity. That's why people call our kings chief. Is a queen a chief? You know, thank you, Desire. Thank you, Desire. Let's continue with that.
We have some more. Yes, I think Senior Gombia, the gentleman that has the last voice was very, very, very pertinent. And something very, very important to note there about the nation and tribe, because the definition of a tribe is totally different from the way they define it in Uganda. And actually, what is your take, Mr. Gombia? Can you please, in just few minutes, answer some of those people that have really raised up some issues?
Refer to myself as a Muganda first, because I was born in Buganda and I'm Uganda, but I'm a Ugandan. And when I'm asked here what country you come from, as I come from Uganda. I don't say I come from Buganda, but to Ugandans, I'm a Muganda first and a Ugandan second. That is the definition between who I am. That's my identity. That's why I'm fine. For me, the land issue comes to my heart because it describes me. It's my identity. If I don't have land as a Muganda, then I'm not a Muganda really. And that's how I take the issue.
Thank you very much. Jonathan, would you please, if you have any answer to some of the callers, and we see how we wrap up. Your voice is not... Can you mind your sound, please? Yes.
Wonderful show. Hello, UNN. Thank you for a wonderful show. Our guest and all the panelists. Yes, Mr. Kabuleta, Joseph. This is your man, Mutumba Salam. I'm watching and I'm on ground, Uganda, Kampala. Yes. For the issue of tribes that I had you people discussing, it's as if this government has taken us back to state formation. But what I'm asking all the panelists and all the people that are to discuss about that issue, that let us all harmonize. Let us harmonize. Yes, you discussed professionally, but let us encourage each other to harmonize, because the issue that we have at hand is one, and that is Mr. Museveni. And the moment we get rid of him, we shall sort out other issues later, because as Mr. Kabuleta said, we have only one problem, and when we get rid of that problem, we shall actually sort out the issue. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah,
and I'm still on.
I think we're gonna stop there with the voices, and then we wrap up with
we have his contact or an email address. Perhaps you can keep in touch and then discuss matters of importance. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I think Jonathan, within 2 minutes, please answer the questions, and as we try to wrap up. Your microphone is muted. Unmute yourself, please. As we come back to Jonathan, let me have Desire. Desire, would you have some answers to some of the callers? I mean, the voices?
In regards to, I understand how people are rattled by the idea of us discussing not being tribes but nations, but that is not independent of Buganda. Ankole too was a nation. They were chiefdoms in Acholi and Karamoja. And on the issue of harmonizing and getting rid of our one problem, Museveni, yes, I do agree we should harmonize and get rid of our one problem, Museveni, but let us not underestimate how big of a problem it is and how deeply rooted Museveni has sinked into Uganda and how much we have to get rid of. So some of the issues that we're going to discuss are going to make many people feel a certain kind of way, but in our discussions, let's always be open to changing positions, because that's one thing I think as Ugandans we're going to need a lot of changing positions, because what's happening is we're trying to get rid of someone who has infiltrated the system, not only in 1986, but as early as or even before 1980, we're talking about 1970. So we have a lot to undo. It's not just Museveni, the one problem, get rid of it, done, and we'll deal with everything later on. As we get rid of Museveni, it should be the time that we get rid of everything that is Musevenism, because that has even seeped into the people who even have nothing to do with Museveni, but might even take on Museveni's ways.
So can you, as you say bye-bye to viewers as we try to wrap up?
Oh yeah, it was, I appreciate being on this panel. It was really, I really enjoyed the discussion. I've learned a lot, and as always, I'm grateful to be here, to be able to share, learn, and grow. Hopefully, as we build up to a different way to govern our country, let's keep having these conversations. Information is power. not even just information, but educating yourselves mean educating all your descendants to come. Let's keep informed. Let's not get distracted. And let's always know what we want, for which I'm sure at this point in time, this is the first, I haven't had a long lifeline, but for the first time in my lifetime, I feel Ugandans, we know what we want, we know what we need. Let us not stop putting pressure because they're crumbling.
Thank you very much, Desire. Thank you very much. Let's have Joseph as wrap up and then say bye bye to our viewers.
Yeah, thank you so much. Are you with me? Yeah, or you are?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everybody and for the discussions we've had. I can see there are different views that need to be harmonized with realities that are on the ground. But the truth, though, is that there will be a lot of work for whoever is handled the mess that will be Uganda when the occupiers are thrown
when the
out.
storm is over.
When the storm is over, we call them occupiers. People who came and occupied. They were chased. When they are chased away, there will be a lot of issues to really be discussed, and there will be a lot of brainstorming, and there will be a lot of disagreements. But the one thing that we must agree upon, number one, is what kind of system we want to be governed by, and then after that, how we are going to develop ourselves as a nation. It's very important for us to develop ourselves as a nation because we've lagged behind. I gave you an example of Tanzania, which was behind us, then with us, then ahead of us, then twice our GDP, all in a very brief period of just over 20 years. So we have a lot of catching up to do. And, increasingly, you look at even countries like Rwanda and you go there and you see that actually they are making a lot of progress and we are stationary. So my interest in all of this is that when this mess is over, we actually can develop our country and have something to write home about. As I told you before, we have a lot of building blocks which we shall start with because we are a blessed country. We really are a blessed country. So when everything is over, even no matter how much they destroy it, there will be enough blocks to rebuild it back. And that's what I'm hoping to see. Thank you so much for everybody. Omuntu abayina endamba z'olunyoro nduno ndubalize mwebale muno n'abaloko n'abakumpura nywena mbasiimire byonna bimukora. So have yourselves a wonderful evening. Bye-bye. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to the moderator, Dr. Juko. Thank you to UNN. Thank you to Prince Chimbukwe. And all the other panelists. Really, really enjoyed your discussions. Have yourselves
yes, Mr. Kabuleta, as you go, what's your take? I mean, would you please participate in the UFCC? And what's your aspiration when it comes to the UFCC?
I was supposed to discuss that privately with Mr. Chimbukwe. So I will not preempt those discussions. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much.
I think I've been unmuted as well.
Yes, we have you then. Yes, come in.
Okay.
And
yes, my parting shots. First of all, I very much enjoyed the discussion here with all the panelists and indeed the insights they shared about different views, issues affecting our country. I'd like to appeal to Ugandans not to play into the hands of the genocidal annotations that the regime has put forward for us. That's the trap we should avoid. Secondly, federalism would be the only opportune system for us to radically radically change this country in terms of our economics, in terms of our politics, in terms of our social welfare, and our destiny altogether. And thirdly, and lastly indeed, Sekabaka Mutesa in his book, Desecration of My Kingdom, said that he couldn't understand precisely the difference between a tribe and a nation. But he said, in any case, the Baganda, and for that matter, the Banyankore, the Banyoro, we have a common heritage, we have a common language, we have a common culture. Whatever you call us doesn't matter, and we think we are a nation in any way. So please disregard the divisive tones from the regime and concentrate on what kind of future we want for the country. God bless you all. I'm happy to be here and look forward to coming in again.
Thank you very much, Council Jonathan. Thank you very much. And finally, Senior Gombia, would you say bye-bye to our viewers?
Of course, of course. First of all, I thank you so much, Dr. Juko, for inviting me to the program tonight. I've really enjoyed the discussions, especially meeting people like Joseph Kabuleta. I've heard about him, read a lot about him, and his struggle to become president, which was unsuccessful, but maybe in the future he can. He's presidential material, and with D, we're always in touch. And Mr. Jonathan, first time to see you here, but you sound very, very, very capable of in whatever task you're being given. Maybe let me end by saying this in my language. Familia yange mbaweza obubaka kubanga mmaze emyaka 34 sibalaba, naye bwebanga mundaba kati mundabyeko, mumaze ebbanga temundaba, naye nsuubira nti muli bulungi, manye ebizibu biriyo byonna, naye Mukama atugumye okuyita mu kino, tujja kuwangula. Ekikulu tukulembeza kuwangula, tusobola kugamba nti tujja kusingibwa mu buli ngeri yonna, tujja kuwangula. Mwenna mbatumidde abaagalwa bange mwenna. Thank you so much.
Mr. Gombia, as a chief in editor-in-chief of the UNN newspaper, would you comment about when are we receiving the first shot of the news?
We're supposed to come out at the end of this month, but there is some glitches that we're trying to sort out. And as soon as that is able, hopefully this week, I'll be able to make that announcement. But right now, I'm not able to confirm that.
Thank you very much. We can't go beyond this as time is always our enemy. And I would like to thank everybody that has participated in this show. And really, Mr. Gombia, the senior journalist, Mr. Kabuleta, the senior journalist and former presidential candidate, Desire, the analyst, and Council Jonathan. It's a pleasure having you on this show. The discussion, ladies and gentlemen, continues on our platforms as you continue discussing what we have been discussing. As I always mention, that Uganda is our country, and everybody that lives in Uganda hopes to find or to see it in the best shape. The only reason why we always spare some time and you all buy your data to come and hear and listen to us is because we want a better Uganda. Uganda is for everyone, and each one is responsible for making it better. The Uganda Federal Consultative Council has been established to find and forge ways by which each and every Ugandan can participate in making Uganda the best. We want you to put in your effort. We want you to bring your views. We want you to bring your ideas. So please, those that want to participate, write to us on our email address as it is written down on the screen, that is ufcc@getunn.com. Please don't forget to write to us. Don't forget to call us in case of anything as we try to discuss or to bring out our issues, Ugandan issues. Please contact us at ufcc@getunn.com. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot go beyond this. We thank you very much for your participation, and we wish you a happy weekend as well as a new week. God bless you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.